You ever have that feeling? A really brilliant idea pops into your head, crystal
Hmm.
clear,
Hmm.
and then you try to write it down, pen to paper or fingers on keyboard, and it gets all tangled up.
Yeah.
The idea just evaporates on the way out.
That gap, that frustration between thinking and writing, that's exactly what we're going to dig into today.
Right.
We're moving beyond just, messy handwriting. We're doing a deep dive into dysgraphia.
Dysgraphia, okay. It's a neurological condition affecting written expression.
Exactly. And we've pulled together quite a bit of information for you.
Yeah.
We're looking at the DSM-5 criteria, clinical viewpoints, and practical stuff from places like the Cleveland Clinic and Melhor Saud, and research from NCBI Bookshelf, too.
So a really broad look.
Yeah. The goal here for you listening is to make sense of it all, to give you a really clear, insightful picture. What is dysgraphia, really? What should you look out for? How do experts actually approach it?
Okay, great. Let's jump in. Fundamentally, then, what is dysgraphia? Because, like you said, it's more than just being a bit sloppy with your writing.
It really is. At its heart, it's a neurological disorder. The DSM-5 actually classifies it as a specific learning disorder, specifically with impairment in written expression.
Impairment in written expression. So what does that actually cover?
Well, it can show up in a few key ways. Handwriting, obviously, that's the graph motor part, the physical act. But it goes deeper.
Okay.
Spelling, grammar, syntax, even just organizing your thoughts on paper coherently. That can all be part of it.
So, super important point here. This isn't about how smart someone is
Hmm.
or if they had bad teachers.
Absolutely not. That's crucial. Research points pretty clearly to differences in brain function, how the brain handles the very complex job of writing. It's neurological, not a reflection of intelligence or effort.
Got it. Okay, so that's the general idea. But our sources mentioned different types of dysgraphia. That sounds like it could add layers.
It does add nuance, yeah. And it's helpful to understand these distinctions, even though, in reality, people often show a mix.
A mix, okay.
But clinicians often talk about three main subtypes: motor dysgraphia, spatial dysgraphia, and linguistic dysgraphia.
Right. Let's break those down. Motor dysgraphia first. What's the main issue there?
Motor dysgraphia really comes down to challenges with fine motor skills, muscle control for writing.
Oh, okay.
And so the most obvious sign is usually handwriting that's really hard to read, even if the person is trying hard. They might write quite slowly, and it can actually be physically tiring, maybe even painful for them.
Wow, painful. That really highlights the physical aspect. Okay, what about special dysgraphia then?
Spatial is about, well, space. How someone perceives and uses space when they write.
On the page.
Exactly. So you might see really inconsistent spacing between letters, between words. Maybe they have trouble writing straight on the line. It sort of drifts up or down.
I can picture that.
Yeah, and maybe the letter sizes are all over the place. It's like navigating the layout of the page is the challenge.
Right. And the third one was linguistic dysgraphia.
Linguistic. This one hits the language processing side of writing.
So less about the physical act.
Often, yeah. Their actual handwriting might look okay, maybe even quite neat. But the problems show up in frequent spelling mistakes, grammar errors, awkward sentence structure,
Okay.
and a real difficulty organizing their ideas logically in writing.
So someone could be a great talker, really articulate, but struggle massively to get those same ideas down correctly on paper.
That's it, exactly. It really shows you writing isn't just moving your hand, it's deeply tied to language processing in the brain.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered the what. What about the why? What causes dysgraphia? Are there known risk factors?
Well, the precise causes are still, being researched, but the evidence points towards neurological differences.
In the brain.
Yeah, in specific areas that handle writing and motor coordination. Think parts like the parietal lobe, which deals with sensory input and motor output, and the cerebellum, which is key for coordinating movement. It's like the wiring for writing works a bit differently.
Different wiring. Okay.
And there seems to be a genetic piece, too.
Ah, so it can run in families.
It seems so. If there's a family history of learning disabilities, like dyslexia or dysgraphia itself, the risk is higher.
That fits with other neurodevelopmental conditions. And our sources also mentioned it often shows up alongside other things, like ADHD or autism.
Yes, co-occurrence is pretty common.
Yeah.
And it's an important point.
Why is that? Is there a connection?
It's likely due to shared underlying neurological pathways. Things involved in attention, motor control, language. For example, both ADHD and dysgraphia can involve executive function challenges, planning, organizing.
Ah, what you need for writing.
Exactly. And the language issues in dyslexia can definitely make the writing difficulties in linguistic dysgraphia worse.
Mm.
So spotting these overlaps is really key for getting the full picture and the right support.
Right. It's not always just one thing. So these factors, brain differences, genetics, they disrupt the actual cognitive processes needed for writing.
That's the idea. Things like working memory, holding info in your head while you write, visual motor integration, coordinating eyes and hand,
Okay.
executive functions we mentioned, planning, organizing, checking your work, and even just the basic motor planning to form the letters. It's a whole symphony of skills.
Mhm.
And dysgraphia can affect different parts of that orchestra.
It really sounds complex when you break it down. So much has to work together. Okay, so how do we spot it? What are the signs, the red flags?
Well, first thing, symptoms really vary. Depends on age, severity, but we can group them.
Okay, let's start with the motor signs. What would we see?
With motor signs, think about that difficult handwriting we mentioned. Illegible, even with effort. Maybe letters formed inconsistently. An awkward or super tight pencil grip. Complaints about their hand hurting or getting tired really quickly when writing.
So they might just avoid writing altogether?
Very possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Then you have the linguistic signs.
Okay, what are those?
Persistent spelling mistakes, even common words, despite practice, grammar or punctuation errors, awkward sentences, trouble getting ideas down in a logical order,
Mm-hmm.
and interestingly, sometimes difficulty even just copying text accurately from a board or book.
Copying. That's surprising. You'd think that would be easier.
It highlights that it's a processing issue, not just about coming up with ideas.
Mm.
Then there are cognitive or executive function signs.
What falls under that?
Difficulty planning out writing beforehand. Writing speed that's noticeably really slow compared to peers.
Even if the writing looks okay.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Forgetting words or ideas mid-sentence.
Mm.
And often, that big gap, we talked about good verbal skills, but much weaker written work. They can say it, but they can't write it effectively.
That difference sounds like a key clue. So if these signs are there, what's the next step? How does diagnosis actually happen?
Diagnosis is usually a team effort. You're typically looking at educational psychologists or neuropsychologists. They specialize in this.
And what do they do? What tests are involved?
It's a pretty comprehensive assessment. They'll likely use specific tests for motor coordination. Often an occupational therapist gets involved there.
Okay.
They'll analyze writing samples, seeing how the person writes spontaneously when copying, maybe when writing something dictated to them, looking at legibility, spelling, grammar, organization.
So different kinds of writing tasks.
Right. Plus cognitive and language tests to understand broader strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And really importantly, input from teachers and parents about the person's history and the specific writing struggles they've seen.
Gathering all the pieces.
Exactly. Yeah. And a big part of it is ruling other things out. Yeah. Is it actually dyslexia? Is it a more general motor issue like developmental coordination disorder? Or are emotional factors playing a big role? You need an accurate picture to know how best to help.
Makes sense. You need the right diagnosis for the right support. Okay, so let's say someone gets a dysgraphia diagnosis. What happens then? What support is available? Our sources said it's manageable, right? No cure, but manageable.
Yes, that's the key message. It can be managed very effectively.
So what does that look like? What interventions make a difference?
It's usually a combination approach. Educational supports, therapy, and often assistive technology.
Okay, let's take those one by one. Educational interventions.
In schools, this often means an individualized education plan, an IEP, or maybe a 504 plan.
Tailored support.
Exactly. It could include specific direct teaching, handwriting skills, focused help with spelling and grammar, more time for tests or written assignments, and maybe allowing other ways to show what they know, like talking instead of writing.
Accommodations, basically.
Yeah.
How about occupational therapy, OT?
OT can be really crucial, particularly if there are motor or spatial challenges.
What do they do?
They work on those underlying fine motor skills.
Mm-hmm.
Activities like tracing, using scissors, playing with putty or Play-Doh things to build hand strength and control.
Practical exercises.
Yeah, and they teach specific handwriting strategies, good posture, how to hold the pencil effectively to make writing less effortful.
Addressing the physical mechanics and technology. You mentioned assistive tech.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Technology can be a huge help. Speech to text is a big one.
Talking to type.
Right. Dictate your thoughts, the computer types them. This bypasses the handwriting struggle. Just typing on a keyboard can be easier for many too.
Sure.
Then there's text prediction software to help with spelling, and tools like graphic organizers to help plan and structure writing before you even start.
Those sound like really practical tools. Empowering.
They really can be. But it's not just about the tools and skills, is it? There's an emotional side, too.
Definitely. Dealing with the frustration, the self-esteem issues.
Yes, that support is vital. Creating a positive environment. Not criticizing messy writing, because that's a symptom,
Right.
and really celebrating the small wins, the improvements to build confidence back up.
That positive focus feels so important. Okay, so looking down the road, if someone gets this kind of support early on, what are the outcomes generally like? What's the prognosis?
With early diagnosis and consistent support, the outcomes are usually very positive.
That's good to hear.
People can definitely improve their writing legibility, their speed. They often feel way less frustrated, less anxious about writing tasks.
Mm.
And they learn to use those tools and strategies effectively, which helps them succeed in school, college, and work. Lots of people with dysgraphia achieve amazing things.
That's really encouraging. But what about the flip side? If it's missed or not addressed?
Unfortunately, yeah, untreated dysgraphia can cause problems. Academically, because writing is everywhere, it can lead to underachievement. It can really hit self-esteem hard, create a lot of anxiety, sometimes lead to kids wanting to avoid school or other behavioral issues just stemming from that constant struggle.
It really underlines how vital it is to catch it early and get the right help in place. Okay, well, this has been incredibly insightful, a real deep dive. So, to sum up, dysgraphia is neurological. It affects writing in various ways, motor, spatial, linguistic, but there are clear signs and, importantly, effective ways to manage it through education, therapy, and tech.
Exactly. Early support is key for positive outcomes. Hopefully this discussion has helped clarify what dysgraphia really entails, going beyond just the handwriting aspect.
Absolutely. It really does make you think differently about writing, doesn't it? How complex it actually is. It
Yeah.
makes you wonder, how does understanding these neurological intricacies change how we view learning itself? And what other questions does this raise for you, listening, about how our brains learn and adapt? Something to think about.